It was supposed to be an ordinary Saturday. 19-year-olds Ava, Max, Zoe, and Ben had finished their classes for the week and wanted to explore the old part of town. Ava, always curious, suggested they check out the abandoned playground she'd read about online. Supposedly, it was left to decay after a terrible accident decades ago, but most people didn't even know it existed. Ava had convinced them with the promise of adventure, and so they found themselves wandering down a narrow path that twisted deeper into the forest. After 20 minutes of pushing through the overgrown trees, they found it. Rusted swings creaked in the wind, and a slide, now overtaken by moss, stood barely recognizable. The playground had an unsettling stillness, like it was frozen in time. Zoe shivered, commenting on how odd it felt, like someone or something was watching them. Max laughed it off, claiming it was just the creepy woods vibe, but even he seemed a little on edge. They split up, each drawn to different pieces of decaying equipment. Ava walked toward a wooden merry-go-round, its faded paint chipped and peeling. She gave it a push, and to her surprise, it turned smoothly, as if it were still waiting for children to play on it. She glanced at Ben, who was near the slide, wiping away moss to uncover old carvings. Names, dates, and odd symbols filled the wood. "Hey, these are like years old," Ben said, squinting at a date carved into the wood. October 31st, 1968. Suddenly, they all heard a child's laughter, faint and distant. The laughter echoed, soft but unmistakable. They froze, looking at each other in shock. There hadn't been any kids around for miles. Max immediately suggested it was some trick of the wind, but Ava shook her head. She pointed out that it sounded close, as if the laughter had come from right behind them. Trying to brush off their growing nerves, they regrouped near the swing set, where Ava convinced them to try swinging in sync to bring the playground back to life. As they swung, the rusty chains screeched, filling the quiet air with a grinding, ghostly sound. For a moment, it felt almost fun, and they laughed until Ava's swing suddenly lurched backward with the force she hadn't applied. She jumped off, nearly falling to the ground. "Did you guys feel that?" she gasped, but they hadn't, and they brushed it off as her imagination. Then Zoe's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen, confused. "I don't have service out here, but I got a notification. It's just a date. October 31st, 1968. She looked up, her face pale. No one laughed this time. An unsettling silence fell over them. Max tried to break the tension by heading over to the merry-go-round, daring them to give it a spin. As he climbed on, the others pushed, and for a few moments, he spun in circles. But soon, he felt dizzy, disoriented. Each time he turned, he caught glimpses of children's faces in the trees, watching him with blank stares. He stopped, blinking, and the figures disappeared. By now, they were ready to leave, but when they turned back to the path, it looked different. The way they'd come seemed wrong. Overgrown vines covered the trail, and no one remembered them being there before. Panic set in as they realized they were lost. Every attempt to retrace their steps led them back to the playground, as though it was drawing them back, refusing to let them go. Suddenly, the laughter returned, louder and closer this time. The friends huddled together, their breaths shallow, eyes darting around. Then, almost instinctively, Ava reached for her necklace, a family heirloom, and muttered a silent plea to find their way back. A few moments later, a breeze stirred, parting the vines, revealing the path once more. They didn't hesitate, sprinting down the trail until they burst back onto the familiar street. When they finally looked back, the playground seemed like a shadow, hidden and waiting, as though it had only let them go because they had played along, just enough. Liam, Jake, Sarah, and Emily had heard rumors of the old hospital on the edge of town, a once bustling place now left to rot. It was said to be haunted, and for years, teens had dared each other to sneak in. On a chilly autumn night, they decided to make it their latest adventure. They each brought flashlights, hoping it would be enough to navigate the winding halls of the abandoned building. As they approached, the hospital loomed above them, its broken windows resembling empty, watchful eyes. Graffiti covered the walls, and warning signs were scattered around, some barely hanging on. "This place feels like it's waiting for us," Sarah whispered, feeling a chill crawl down her spine. Jake laughed it off, although even he couldn't shake the unease. Inside, the air was thick and stale, filled with the scent of decay and something sharper, almost metallic. Their footsteps echoed as they made their way through the corridors, brushing past broken gurneys and shattered glass. Emily stopped to look at an old patient file, yellowed and faded. "Looks like this one was admitted in 1975 and never discharged," she murmured, raising her eyebrows at Liam. They found their way to the hospital's surgical ward, where equipment lay scattered, some still on tables, as if abandoned mid-procedure. The eerie sight stirred something deep within them. Jake dared Liam to lie on one of the operating tables, and trying to be brave, he did. But the second he lay down, he felt an intense pressure on his chest, like something or someone was pinning him down. He jumped up, his face pale. Did any of you feel that?" he stammered. Ignoring the incident, they continued deeper into the hospital, reaching the maternity ward, which was rumored to be the most haunted. The silence here was unbearable. Suddenly, the faint sound of a lullaby played from a broken speaker above them. They exchanged nervous glances, each wondering if they were imagining it. Sarah tried to laugh it off, but her voice cracked. As they explored, Emily noticed movement out of the corner of her eye, a shadow slipping down the hall. "Did you see that?" she whispered, but by the time they looked, the shadow was gone. Jake insisted they were just scaring themselves, but he didn't sound convinced. They all felt it now, an oppressive weight pressing down on them, urging them to leave. Finally, they reached the basement, where the hospital morgue was located. The heavy steel door stood open, the cold air thick with an unnatural chill. Sarah dared Jake to step inside, and he did, though not without hesitation. As he wandered among the empty gurneys, he heard a faint whisper, calling his name. He froze, his blood turning to ice. "Let's get out of here," Jake muttered, finally shaken. They turned to leave, only to find the door locked. Panic set in, and they pounded on it, but it wouldn't budge. Then, the whispering started again, this time all around them, growing louder until it was a chorus of voices, each one desperate, pleading for release. Just as suddenly as it had started, the whispers stopped, and the door creaked open. The friends didn't hesitate, racing through the corridors until they burst into the cold night air. As they looked back, they could have sworn they saw shadows in the windows, watching them with mournful eyes, as if waiting for them to return.